Innovation is no coincidence. It's a result of strategy.
It is clearly evident that journalism will have to change very substantially.
When Gutenberg came on the market, that was back in the 15th century. And who was once a typesetter and will likely to remember that date? So that was around the year 1450, which was directly followed by the 30 Years' War, when Gutenberg hit the market with his printing press and practically ushered in the industrial age. This was the first time that people had the opportunity to distribute information. And that means that it's not just the technology, but that social processes also change when communication processes change. And we're once again experiencing such times today. And there are all kinds of minor and major upheavals all over the place. These are structural issues that are undergoing far-reaching change, whether in companies, in the church or elsewhere. What you're witnessing is a wealth of information that is being placed on the net in real time by social media people, and is no longer being distributed by news agencies such as DPA, EP or Reuters. What this situation is capable of, among other things, is when Japan loses 640 billion in 2 hours, thanks to the information age, online, in real time. What's happening all over the world is that people are holding on to old, outdated things. We have two trends today, two structural trends, for example, where you have a situation in Silicon Valley, for example, where 30% of the people working in the companies come from abroad, while Germany is involved in Sarrazin discussions and xenophobia. On the one hand, we're advancing sustainable energy concepts and technologies, while we're in the Stone Age, and still talking about nuclear power at the same time. In other words, the industrial age still equals the nuclear power age. Or on the one hand, we have Facebook and Twitter, and on the other hand, the crisis of major mainstream political parties. This means that there is always a polarization of what is currently going on today, and we find ourselves in an extreme field of tension, which is, in the final instance, caused to an extreme extent by the information age, and is also being lived through and by the information age.
In Austria, News is the largest news magazine. We reach 750,000 readers. We belong to the Grüne und Jahr Verlag publishing house, and we are definitely a print product. We are a publishing company like so many others for whom it is not so easy to adapt to the conditions of today's information society, because the business model is based on the print magazine. We naturally have a website called news.at, which is also profitable, but to a much lesser degree than our print operations. And it is all in all a smaller product, which involves less editorial energy than the print magazine. This situation is frequently encountered because we, the people in the publishing houses, are slower than we should be in adapting to the new information society. If you take a closer look at what is online, what is coming across via Twitter and Facebook, the major share is still coming from conventional editorial offices, because to date, no replacements have been found for people who are salaried professionals in the editorial offices and are doing this work. Preparing the online offerings is also basically the same kind of work, researching, investigating, writing and processing information. But what is clearly evident is that journalism will have to change very substantially, that we will have to adapt to these changes, because journalism, in the form that it still exists today, will in many cases disappear. And that would be a shame, because in these times of far-reaching change, journalism is more important than ever before. Just like several other German magazines, such as Spiegel and Stern, we featured a Fukushima cover and a large photo section and explanations as to what had happened and where, including expert contributions and explanations. And all of these cover issues wound up selling poorly. What would have been a huge sales success 5 years ago, given such an event with global implications, delivered disappointing sales. Quite simply because everybody knew everything there was to know 3 days later. There was no way that we could have been that fast. This means that we have to become active much further in advance, like the newspapers did, that were reporting a few days later. We have to put in the analysis as soon as possible and assume that most people already know what is going on, and carefully insert the relevant information in such a way that those readers who were not yet in the know also get the message. But the news itself already goes out on other channels.
We experienced the following in the last years. Our sector suffered to a very considerable extent. The 4 major Japanese motorcycle manufacturers went into a severe downturn. This mainly had to do with the yen to euro exchange rate. Today, Japanese motorcycles are just as expensive as a BMW or a Harley, or cost even more. And we are part of this structural change, which has impacted dramatically on our earnings because the advertising sales naturally took a fairly hefty plunge as well. This forced us to do some major rethinking in the year 2007 and 2008, and in the process we hit on Censhare. We very rapidly thought our way into the whole concept and embarked on a huge restructuring drive that I headed and managed myself. We implemented the Censhare system with a new workflow and radically restructured the entire editorial group. With our publication Motorrad, we were the first magazine on the air with the iPad, and we were very proud of this achievement. Now, what is the major advantage for me as editor-in-chief? I can stand here now and talk to you and at the same time rely on everything functioning smoothly in the background. And if a relevant piece of news still happens to come in that we may or may not have been waiting for, we can write it up as a PDF overnight if need be, and tomorrow it will be at the printers in Dresden. All in all, throughout the entire editorial group, we succeeded in basically saving a quarter of our budget without having to discontinue a product. In fact, quite to the opposite. We are currently producing more products than ever before.